Welcome back, everyone, to Jerry Exclusive. Today, we are filming episode 6 of the podcast, and I'm very proud, I'm very grateful, I'm very honored to have Lewis Matheson on the podcast. You might know him from physics online videos and worksheets and textbooks and stuff like that. So, Lewis, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, kind of always busy with bits and pieces, but loads of projects on the go, and yeah, pretty excited about what's to come in the future.
Nice, nice. I mean, you've always had a lot of like new stuff coming out. Like obviously your YouTube channel, new videos and stuff. I saw you posted one with the university admissions, something about admissions tutors and stuff. You also had like a new physics workbook, the one where it gives you one question a day. That really helped me in my A levels a lot. So yeah, you always
Oh,
have
cool.
like good stuff coming out as well, which is obviously nice for students and stuff. Is there anything you can speak on, like any specific thing coming up, or you not like don't want to speak on
Yeah, I
it?
mean, yeah, I don't really have any secrets. I suppose there's so many ideas that I sort of want to push forward. I've just released, or in a process of kind of releasing the latest of these A level workbooks. So
Okay.
I've just released book 4. And that's out of a series of 6 books. So the first 3 books kind of cover year 12, and then the second 3 books cover year 13. So I've just finished book 4, so I've got books 5 and 6 to go. And
Yeah.
writing a book takes a lot more time than I thought it would when I started, but I'm kind of sort of committed to that process now. And also, I'm doing a few more practice papers. I know that students really appreciated those last exam season. So I'm putting together a huge amount of practice papers for GCSE and then A-level physics.
Yeah.
And then also in the future, my plan is to redo my entire A-level website. So film all the content again with many more worked examples and worksheets and downloadable things that students can use. And really focusing on what students need and what they want to use, so that they're not doing unnecessary work. But also it kind of guides them through step by step. So really, anybody could teach themselves pretty much all of A-level physics if they were motivated enough to. So that's my plan. Like, it might take a few years to get there, but I'm not kind of stopping now. So there's plenty more to come.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, I'm assuming. Like, have you been in here ever since you like left from school? Was this your determined path, where you like, I'm gonna start up my own kind of educational thing and get it going, or did you like come from somewhere else into this?
I came from somewhere else, and I had no intention of being a teacher. So I quite liked maths and science when I was at school. I found they were the subjects that I found a bit easier than the others. I didn't really like languages. I hated learning French and German. I found English okay, but it definitely wasn't something that came naturally to me.
Mm.
And when I was picking my university choices, I thought, well, I quite like maths and I like some of the physics. So I did an engineering degree. So even when I was at university, I never thought about teaching. It was never something that I thought I'd want to do. And also the thought of standing up in front of 30 people and presenting material for hours a day was just the last thing I ever thought I'd be. That wasn't, I didn't like public speaking. I didn't like putting my hand up and answering a question in class when I was at school. So for me, the thought of being the person that everybody's looking at while you're explaining things to them wasn't really part of my plan.
Yeah.
And I suppose even though I did an engineering degree, I did it because I felt that engineering kind of leads onto a career. So once you finish university, you've got that degree, which means you can walk into an engineering job. But to be honest, all I really wanted to do was to join the army.
Oh,
So I didn't have any, So I didn't have any kind of big plans to work in an office for my life. I just wanted to be, exploring the world and doing exciting things. So for me, the army was my sort of original kind of career that I was sort of working towards, really.
wow. That's completely like unexpected. I didn't know you were gonna go all the way there. I thought, because a lot of people usually, come into, what you're doing, like helping students from maybe
Yeah.
they did something in education before, but it's very interesting to see that you came kind of full circle. You kind of didn't know where you were going, and then you wanted to go into the army, and then somehow, somewhere, something switched, or did something switch? Did something, did you like wake up one morning and you were like, you know what? maybe this has been for me all along, or was it just something that you just somehow found yourself in?
So when I was at university, I was in the officer training course. So we did a lot of, playing armies on the weekends and things. And that helped kind of pay my way through university because I could go along and, you earned a bit of money for doing extra weeks in the summer or working on the weekends. But then when I tried to join the army, they failed me on my eyesight because I used to have quite bad eyesight. So that was like, my number one career was like not going to happen. But I stayed in the officer training corps, and then I joined the Army Reserve at the time. And so when I finished university, I got a job as an engineer, which my engineering degree kind of came in pretty useful for. So I moved down to Bristol and I worked for a company called Atkins. So they're a large engineering consultancy, and I was on their graduate training scheme. And I was working with some amazing people. It was like a kind of cutting edge project looking at future armored vehicles. And I found it really boring. From like the first week, I thought it's like this should be the best it can be. For me, it was like a great office to work in, a great team of people. But I found that the job I did was a lot of sort of sitting in front of a computer, looking at documents, looking at contracts, and not really going out and doing much. And I did that for about 18 months. And for me at the time, being an engineer wasn't really where I saw my career leading for the next sort of 40 or 50 years. I mean, I could have done it. I could have sort of worked in the office and very slowly worked my way up to be a project manager or something. But at the time, I thought that's not really where I want to be. But parallel to that, I was still doing a lot with the Army Reserve on the weekends. Yeah. So in my holiday time and in my weekends, I'd be going on exercise. I'd be parachuting, I'd be traveling around the world, I'd be, doing really exciting things. And so I basically decided to leave my engineering job. I went full time with the Army Reserve. And then eventually from that, I then did, I think 2 or 3 years of full time stuff with the Army. So even though originally I'd been rejected because of my eyesight, I then had laser eye surgery. And when I did the army tests again, I just didn't mention it. So I didn't lie to get in, but I didn't give the full truth. But it allowed me to get into the army. And the army for me, it was exciting, and it was, working with amazing people. But because I was an army officer, a lot of the time I was instructing other people. So I was teaching people in the military about certain things. And that got me then used to being at the front of a group of people, explaining things and seeing people develop. And that's really, I think, where I became interested in the idea of teaching. So even though I never expected that to be the case, I really enjoyed teaching people in the military. And I did a tour of Afghanistan. And when I came back, I thought, right, I've done the good bits of the army. I was very lucky in what I did. But I probably need a more established and safe career that's kind of better for family life, because the army is amazing, but you're always traveling to different places. There's no structure, and you don't know what you're going to be doing 1 week to the next, which is great when you're young. But later on, if you've got a family, you don't want to be saying, well, I'm going to go to this country for 6 months and I'm going to be here for 2 years, and then it's quite a disruptive thing for the rest of the family. So when I came out of the army, I trained to be a teacher, and having done an engineering degree, physics to me seemed like the obvious option.
Nice. Wow, that's a zigzag journey right there. From laser eye surgery to like test and like teaching people. Definitely like a lot of things that you picked up along the way. Because when you started, you said you weren't very confident with public speaking and stuff. The idea of kind of speaking to people was daunting, but like over time, you kind of built those skills through just engaging in like teaching people and stuff like that, which I feel like is something that you teach a lot through your YouTube channel as well. Like you teach students skills, not just physics stuff, but also like skills to help them academically and personally as well, which I think is an amazing thing. And speaking about your YouTube channel, how long have you had it for? Like, did you start it all the way from the start or what?
Yeah, so even when I was at university, YouTube just wasn't a thing. Because I was at university and I left in 2004. So at that time, although there was lots of content online, YouTube as a platform didn't exist. So it was never part of my future plans that I could do this. People didn't make videos on YouTube and make it into their career. Really, when I was teaching, I found that a lot of time when I tried to give students videos to watch, the videos didn't quite answer the questions that the students have. And a lot of them were, I mean, the Khan Academy was the first thing that I was using quite a lot, but a lot of the Khan Academy videos were aimed at the American market. And so when I was trying to use those with my students, sometimes they used a different notation to explain the maths and the physics. Sometimes they went at too high a level and like went to university level physics. And other times they're a bit too simple. And I thought, well, I'm sure I could do this myself and actually make some videos. And I suppose the other thing that I'd had in mind when I started YouTube, which I think was about 2015, was that if there's a way that I can generate some income, it means I won't need to do personal tuition. Because although teaching is a great job and it's very stable, there's a certain limitation in how much money you can earn per year.
Yeah.
And so when you're starting out, you're on a very fixed kind of salary that it does increase year by year. And it does mean that, you know, after you've been teaching for a while, your salary doesn't go down. So you've got a good, stable income. But when you're starting out and you've got a family and things, there's not really much extra money there. So I was doing bits of personal tutoring on the side, and that was great to actually meet those people and help them out every week. But there's also quite a big time commitment in doing that kind of physical, face-to-face, online, actual in-person tuition. So I thought if I could make some extra money with YouTube, that means I wouldn't need to do personal tutoring. So I started videos. I taught myself everything, which I think is one of the things that the army taught me, is that just because you've not been given a course on something, it doesn't mean that you can't go out there and learn a new skill yourself. And a lot of the time you can teach yourself things on YouTube. So my early videos, I borrowed a camcorder from school. I filmed things at home in the evening, often when my children had gone to bed. So I'd set things up on the dining table with a bit of paper, a camera just held in like a stand. And then I just recorded the same kind of content that I was teaching in class. And there are the videos now which have got, you know, over 100,000 views, which is pretty incredible, and how they're still helping people, even though they are quite old now. So YouTube was one side of it, because that was a free way that you can host videos and people can find stuff so you can share it. But I always went into it thinking I need my own website that actually can organize things.
Yeah.
And that's where in the future I can generate revenue by having everything organized so that students can find what they need when they need it, but also having a way to have a bit of a paywall so that people can actually buy access to extra videos. So that was always my intention when I started. And I guess I got lucky, really, and it sort of goes from there.
When it comes to physics, there's very few platforms that will help you as much as Physics Online, and I'm saying that from experience and my friends as well. You know, there's a lot of times where we've been like, oh, we don't understand this topic. You know, the teacher we don't really get it from the lessons. Let's just watch the Physics Online video. And the thing about your videos as well is that they're not like all over the place. Like you said, they actually answer the question that we're looking for, and they're very straight to the point. And you have the illustrations with the Lego pieces and the little sweets and stuff like that, which makes it more like understandable and relatable. Yeah.
Yeah, and I try to bring it to life, because sometimes you can just explain things, you know, just with a pen and paper, but you know, maybe there's a bit too much Lego, but you know, that's just something I had lying around the house at the time, and then it kind of sort of went from there really to try and explain some of the concepts. And I've seen that when I started, there weren't really many people in terms of teachers making educational content, and I think in maths there seem to be quite a few more people doing it. So you've got things like Hegarty Maths and Mr. Barton Maths, and I think there's a lot of maths teachers making content. There's quite a few people doing GCSE stuff for English, for example, but for physics, there weren't really that many people. And I thought, have I gone down is this like a really small niche that not many people are going to be interested in? But I think the advantage in education is that you have a certain number of students will use that material each year. They'll do their exams. And then the next year, another 20 or 30,000 people come through to do A-level physics. And another sort of 500,000 people actually go through and do their GCSE exams every year. So the advantage is there's always like the audience I'm kind of making videos for, that kind of refreshes every year. But also that means that I lose my current subscribers and the people who've been using my stuff. I have to kind of really start again with the next intake of students. But it's going pretty well, and it's something I never thought I'd be doing when I started teaching. So when I started teaching, I was like this is my career now. And my plan was to, you know, be a head of physics first of all, because I quite liked being in charge of my own department. And then I ended up being a head of science at a different school. So that was really good, having, you know, my specialism being science and having the ability to, you know, plan things for the whole department was brilliant. And I never thought I'd leave teaching to be doing stuff on YouTube. I just thought that YouTube would be a couple of £100 extra a month, you know, just to kind of help with the income.
Yeah.
And there's a point when I thought, well, maybe if I could earn £1,000 a month, kind of like passively, where the money's just coming in at the end of each month, that's quite amazing. And that's a really big increase in my income, you know, on top of a normal job. So I never thought it could be a full-time thing. I always thought of it as a bit of passive income alongside teaching.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a while to think, okay, I'm not just a teacher anymore. I'm a business owner, and so much more of an entrepreneur. And I need
Definitely what you said about the passive part of it. That's one of the things which, you know, draws a lot of people towards social media and being an entrepreneur like you are, because, you know, you can just be sleeping while someone is watching your videos. You could be on holidays while someone is watching your videos, and so you get, you know, a lot of extra income from that. And also the part about being a business owner, like, it's more wider than just being a teacher. When you're a teacher, yeah, you have a couple of students to take care of, but as a business owner, there's more sides to it. I'm assuming, like you have to update your website and stuff like that. It's a lot more, like, there's no fixed hours as well. You just work when you feel like you need to work. You have to complete a certain task, and it doesn't really matter how long it takes you to do that. Whereas as a teacher, you know, maybe you have a fixed kind of schedule, like 9 to 5 or something like that. So I'm gonna ask you maybe a controversial question, but like, what do you prefer more? A teacher with more of a fixed schedule, or this?
So I would say that when I was an engineer, I had a very fixed schedule each week. It was like you have to do certain hours, and I never took work home from the office, which I found at times a bit limiting. With the army, it wasn't a fixed schedule at all, and sometimes you would just work and work and work. So you could, you know, you'd work for 20 hours in the day and have a couple of hours sleep at night, then you'd be out again the next day and you'd be on exercise, and it was non-stop. And so with the army, there are periods of intense workload, and other times when there's nothing to do, they'd say, well, it's Thursday afternoon, I'll see you back on Monday. So you'd have like a long weekend. And teaching, although there's a fairly fixed schedule in terms of hours in the day when you're actually teaching classes, with teaching, there's not really an end to the amount of work that you can do. So, for example, you might mark a set of books, but you could maybe mark another set of books after that, or each book you could spend a bit more time on, or you could plan a lesson. And then a lot of the tasks that teachers do, they don't really have an end point, because there's always more that you could be doing. And I found as a teacher, you know, it was, I'd get home from school and then I'd be working in the evenings, or I'd be working on the weekends trying to catch up with things, or I'd be getting up early in the morning to get some marking done before I went into school. So actually as a teacher, they were quite long hours. But I think the biggest difference is that now I've got complete flexibility, and that can be amazing. But there's also this: have I actually done enough? Yeah. And I think, and in terms of like the idea of passive income, you can make passive income, but it's several years down the line, and it means that you might have spent a couple of years on a project where you haven't got paid anything at all, and you don't know if it's going to work out. So when I started making videos, you know, I couldn't charge for a single part of my website until I'd made all of the videos. So I'd made, you know, 300 or 400 videos before I could charge a single penny. And it worked out for me, but potentially I could have made 400 videos and then nobody watched them and nobody bought them. So that could have been a huge amount of work that actually didn't pay off. And so I think with passive income, it's, in hindsight, you think, oh yeah, this is brilliant. I've made a product that people just keep buying, even if I'm if it's all automated, you can be doing anything else and the money's coming in. But it's all a bit of a gamble when you start, and that's the thing. It's like it's a lot of work that might not pay off.
Yeah.
And the other thing with passive income is it's not completely passive. You still have to do work to promote it. And so, although again, longer term, I think it's definitely gives you some freedom and flexibility in your time. There's nothing that's, I don't think, truly passive. You still have to be putting some work into it to keep it current and, help with customers and things like that.
We're going to have to take a quick 2-minute break, guys. We'll be back after the break. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you like and you subscribe.
This is what you do. Listen very carefully. Firstly, what you're going to do is go to Medium. Medium is just a blog site. Go to the blog site. If you haven't got an account, create an account right now. And then follow the account called Eco Explorers. Follow that account because that's very important. Because once you follow that account, that lets me know that you follow that account. And then you're going to get even more discounts on these products. Examples of products are like spirituality books, guided meditations, crystals, and stuff about chakras. And if you're into all that stuff, this is perfect. So do it right now before we get back into the video. Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. We are back after the break. We were just talking about, passive income and, YouTube, and how you actually have to put in some work into passive income. It's not just completely passive. And while you're talking about it, I was kind of interested because not many teachers do make that transition from conventional teaching into kind of being an entrepreneur teacher. So I was wondering, because I usually do this with all of the guests on here. I try to kind of delve into their childhood to see if there was maybe like anything that kind of like inspire your mindset to kind of give you this discipline. Because from hearing your story, I've kind of picked up on that. You're very adaptable. You're always moving forward. You're always disciplined. You're always working hard towards something. So was there like anything, like any kind of childhood, maybe upbringing that shaped you into this kind of person?
You know what? I've not really thought of that before. I suppose I guess a big influence was my father, who had been in the army when he was younger. So when I was born, he was still in the army at the time, and I guess that definitely influenced me to, become interested in the military. And I suppose when he left the army, he became self-employed for a while before he then ended up working for several other companies. And he had a geography background, so he was working in GIS systems, which is like looking at mapping and things like that. And I suppose what I learned from him was that the industry that he was in, you could only be based in certain places in the UK. So, if you work for these companies, you can only be in a certain few geographical locations. And I thought with teaching, it gives you complete flexibility because everywhere in the country, there are going to be people who need education and people who need to be in school. So therefore, I'm not limiting myself to just living in one place for the job. And I think you might find the same in other industries. So, for example, a lot of engineering might happen in Bristol, or it might happen in Derby, or certain areas where if you want to work in that industry, you're limited geographically about where you can be. And so I suppose that's what kind of attracted me to teaching. But I wouldn't say in my family that there's been a lot of people who own their own business and are entrepreneurs. I'd say that, and I think this is probably a generational thing as well, is that most people tend to have fairly stable careers. They worked for the same company for a long time and in sort of fairly traditional industries. So there's no kind of content creation or, setting up your own business really within my family. So I don't know where that came from. I think probably the biggest driver for me was about needing to earn enough money. And I think that is a big motivator. And it's something that didn't kick in until I was in my late 20s. So when I was at university, I never really wanted to get a job just for the money. And I suppose that's why when I left university, I wasn't thinking I want to go and work in a city and work for a financial company, even though an engineering degree, that's the skills that lots of companies are looking for. If you go and work in finance in a city, it's a great degree to have. But I was never that motivated by money. And I guess because I wasn't motivated by money, that allowed me to quit my engineering job and do stuff with the army instead. And also that meant that when I became a teacher, I wasn't thinking I'm going to become a teacher for the money. It's not like the job that's going to get you rich. But then there's also, alongside that, when you've got a family and you need to support a family and children, you do need to earn enough money. And there's this thing of, there's, how much money does it take to be happy? And, a lot of rich people say, oh, it's not about the money and money's not that important. But when you don't have any money, it is really important and it's all you can think about.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I was as a teacher. There's times where financially it's quite difficult, to kind of support a family and kind of give them everything they need just through the kind of salary of a fairly new teacher. So for me, the money is the thing that's driving me to kind of earn enough money to keep living. And now I suppose my driver is, have I got enough money to sustain the business? Because what I want to do is, I've got quite big plans for what I want to do. I want it to be that every single person doing A-level physics has got access to my material.
Yeah.
And in order to kind of bring the quality in the way that I want to happen and, put the money back into creating more resources so that every student doing physics is using them, that takes a certain amount of money to do that. And so for me, it's like, can I build a sustainable business where there's enough income coming in that it allows me to have the freedom and flexibility to spend my time doing what I think is right, rather than just working for the sake of earning money in the short term?
Yeah. Like you said, it's definitely like a give and take. Like, it's about balance to a certain degree. It's not, it's not all about the money, but a huge part of it is about the money. And I've always found that, like, there's levels to, like, the want for money. Like, when you don't have it, you want it a lot, but then once you get it, like, people say, oh, it's not about the money, but there are people down there who think it is all about the money. But once you get to the higher levels, you kind of get used to it, and so it's not as important because you have an abundance of it. But I also find it interesting what you said about, like, investing into the business. I feel like that's one of the parts that people don't talk about enough, or people don't realize enough, is that you actually, to have long-term growth, you actually reinvest some of the profits that you get back into your business, no matter whether it's a bank or like a YouTube business or like an entrepreneur, like educational platform business. Like, there's kind of like a flow of money back into it, because it's like your baby, right? Like, you take care of your baby, spend on your baby so it can grow. And I feel like that's a part that people might neglect a lot. Like, when you started up with, like, YouTube and your website and stuff like that, I'm guessing there was a lot more, like, investment than profits that you got. Like, you were putting more money than you were getting out, or was it the other way around?
So I think actually by doing a lot of the work myself, I kept my initial startup costs really low, because I didn't have, like, big investors saying, here's £100,000 to spend on it. It was all my own money that I was spending. So that meant there are things where I thought, well, I'll just use that simple camera. And it's only later on that I got a better camera, and I've got like 2 or 3 cameras now, so that the latest videos are much higher quality. Doing the website, I did that all myself, and I used a platform called Wix. So Wix. It's just a way to build websites. But that came after, quite a few years beforehand, using different things to build websites and, trying to do some coding myself and things. And that was all self-taught. So a lot of the time, especially with something like YouTube, you can start with a fairly low budget. And as you make a bit more money, you can put that back into the business to make more videos, which will then generate more money and so on. I think now, of course, I left teaching about 5 years ago, and I quit my full-time job when I was a head of science, and I thought, that's fine, I can make it work. And for the first year, I did everything myself. So that was sending out all the invoices, everything in the business I did completely on my own. And it was only really a year later when I'd attended some business courses where it really became apparent that, you've got to try and outsource what you're doing and delegate things and eliminate other bits and pieces. So that's when I hired the first person to work with me. And we knew each other because we both worked together as teachers. So having somebody else in the business has freed me up massively to spend more time doing physics. So I'm not the one on the phone chasing schools that haven't paid an invoice. Somebody else is doing that. Or if a purchase order comes in, or, just this kind of businessy stuff that happens in the background that you need to kind of run any business. I'm able to free myself from that task, and instead somebody else who really likes those tasks is doing that instead.
Yeah.
And then from that, I've now got another couple of people who work with me part-time. So again, it's amazing to have other people who work with me who can do various parts of the business. But then obviously there's a cost associated with that in terms of like a monthly wage. And then if you look at the total amount spent over the year, it feels fairly significant. But on the other hand, having somebody who works with me who can proofread a book or answer questions, or for example, this daily workout book I've been working on, I've paid some teachers to write some questions for me, which I've then collated. I've then given that to another teacher to check the work, and he's kind of put his answers in, and I've checked those, and then somebody else has proofread that, and then somebody else has proofread that as well. So all of this time it's mainly a lot of time, but in order to get people's time, you need to pay them money. So there's like a big outlay. So at the moment, it's going to be a long time before I make back any money on those books. But, 2 years, 3 years down the line, that will all be then kind of profit kind of coming in each month. And with the way that I've set the books up, it's through Amazon. And so that means it's all completely automated. So Amazon deal with the payments, Amazon deal with returns, and Amazon deal with actually printing the books and sending them out. And at the end of the month, I just get a royalty check or a payment into the account from Amazon. So things like that, it takes a lot of people to kind of put these things together. And if it takes people, that means it takes money.
Yeah, definitely. But it's very important, like you said, to like kind of outsource, because like you were talking about that 1 year where you did everything. I'm sure it must have been like really draining, going from task to task to task. Like, it just splits your focus in 10 different directions. But like when you said you can employ someone to do some specific task, then you can just focus on that one big thing that will help the business much massively, and you can also rest a little bit more. So yeah, that's definitely important to outsource. Is there like any other like kind of big things that you learned about business when you went to maybe certain business courses that have helped you a lot?
I suppose a lot of this I'm still trying to sort of teach myself, and there's various podcasts that I listen to. So I spend a lot of time driving around, taking my daughter to school and back. So there's a lot of podcasts I listen to where I pick up ideas. I'm trying to implement them and things. So the Tim Ferriss podcast, Ali Abdaal, people like that, and the Diary of a CEO. So they interview lots of other people, and I'm still trying to make sure that what I'm doing now is going to have a long-term benefit rather than trying to do things for like a short-term gain. And I suppose a lot of this I've just found the hard way, and I've made mistakes, and I've spent time on things that maybe didn't really sell that well. Or for example, I did a load of videos which I put up on TikTok, and I was doing one video a day like a worked example on TikTok. And at the time, it generated lots and lots of growth on TikTok. But those videos now, like a year later, nobody's watching them because of the way that TikTok as a platform is always serving up new content.
Yeah.
And actually, even though at the time I thought, well, this is really good, it's going to help grow YouTube, the two things didn't really correlate.
Yeah.
So I suppose what I'm trying to think about, and it's a difficult thing to do, because it's like you've got to sacrifice short-term income to think, do you know what, I won't grow this. Instead, if I make these videos which are going to be useful to students in 3 years' time, or in 5 years or 10 years' time, and still searchable, and just this kind of longer form evergreen content, they call it, so stuff that's going to be useful for years to come, that's where I need to put my focus. And I see the same with these practice papers and the workbooks I'm doing. If I spend, say, for example, if I spend, say, £5,000 paying teachers to help write some questions for these GCSE papers, and then I spend a couple of months, writing answers in, checking answers, making videos, I won't see any income generated from those until we get to 2024 and the exam season, sort of May, June time. Now, it might be that I spend all this money and all this time and nobody buys them. But, that's the kind of risk that I'm taking. On the other hand, the good thing about having your own business and being in charge of it is that if they sell really well, then I'm the one who then can actually make the profit from that to then reinvest back into the business. So it's kind of working hard, but the payoffs can be it is good when you do get that payoff.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It is very good. Like when you work for on a project for a long time, and it finishes, and then it does well, you're like a sigh of relief. Like, yeah, that was great. I love looking at that. I love looking at that project. Every time you see it, it's kind of like it reminds you of the benefit that you're helping thousands and millions of people. Now, I was talking about how you helped me with my A levels. Like, one thing about me as well is that I don't take notes a lot. I'm not a note person. I work
Mhm.
really well when I watch videos and like I use flashcards and stuff. So literally,
Yeah.
my revision method was watch physics online videos and do flashcards. That was it. Your videos was like 80% of my revision, and it helped me a lot.
Oh,
And
cool.
which is obviously one of the big projects that you worked on that paid off massively in the future.
I think I need to. I think the difficulty is, is saying no to things. And I find that if I try and do too many things, I spread myself too thin, and then it's not a sustainable long-term thing. So, if I'm trying to do YouTube Shorts and a TikTok reel, and you put it on Facebook and TikTok, and there's so many places that short form video content can be used, that it gets a bit overwhelming. And I think we'll see how it goes. But my main focus now is going to be like one video a week on YouTube, a weekly newsletter that I need to kind of increase the way that I can get people to sign up to that through the website. And that's like just that one newsletter every single week, which is something I'm really trying to grow at the moment. And I think TikTok has a place because you can get some really good views in terms of I can put the same video onto TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and the one on TikTok might get 35,000 views or something, which is incredible. But I don't know if they're quality views, and I don't know if those 35,000 people who might have seen that video actually then go onto the website or go into YouTube to actually watch the proper in-depth physics revision videos. But equally, it's something that people are using it, so I can't completely ignore it. So I guess I'm going to try and balance YouTube and TikTok, especially going into the exam season this year.
Yeah.
But it's that, I'm thinking about what am I doing today that people will be using in 3 or 4 years' time, and therefore is causing revenue in 3 or 4 years' time. And that's kind of, it's difficult to do that because you think, well, I could do this today and that would earn some money, or I could maybe work for this person, or I could do this thing with this school, and that's immediate cash in the bank, potentially. But then that doesn't pay off into anything that's going to be like a lasting thing a few years down the line. But again, I'm making mistakes. I'm willing to learn, and I don't think there's like a rule book that you have to follow. And I think that's the biggest difference between what I'm doing now and when I worked for an employer as a teacher, where as a teacher, you've got very clearly defined goals. You do this, and then that's the end of it. And then, and I think as well, the work I'm doing now is still aligned to the school year. So there's like the exam season and things, but it's not like there's an end point, which is quite nice in a way that to some extent I don't have a deadline that I have to meet. But on the other hand, sometimes deadlines do make you work harder and more effectively. Whereas if you've got an open-ended deadline, it's the kind of thing that the task that you do just expands to fill the time that you've got available. But yeah, I'm just trying lots of things and seeing what works, and happy to try and change the way that I work, and I'm trying to look at email less. I'm trying to delegate more, and also think about what I can eliminate. So what am I doing each day that makes me feel busy but isn't actually a productive task? And so it's like how I can be more, not so much more productive, but just spend less time on tasks which aren't really.
Like I was reading something on like Parkinson's law or something like that, where if you give yourself 4 hours to do a tiny task, you're going to try and fill up that tiny task in that 4 hours, which is obviously one of the challenges, when you're self-employed. But like you said, working for an employer, it's kind of fixed. Maybe you have new things that you want to try out, but it doesn't allow you to do that. So there's definitely like the benefits and the setbacks as well. But we're going to take a quick 2-minute break before we come back.
This video is sponsored by Jerry Exclusive. Check out the TikTok channel for loads of entertainment and fun. Back to the episode.
All right.
Yeah, we are back after the break for the last segment of this episode. It's been very nice talking to you about, all these different topics, ranging from your childhood to how you came into this industry. We've spoken a lot about, physics online. I want to switch the focus a little bit to you. Before we do that, is there like anything you want to like plug about, future projects or any links I can put in the description that you want people to go check out?
I guess really, if you are doing GCSE or A-level physics, and just head over to Physics Online on YouTube, you'll find loads of stuff there. And again, there's even more on my website. So that's GCSE Physics Online or A-level Physics Online. And of course, as well, what I'd like to do over the coming years is a bit more stuff for maybe people at university or people thinking about university. So, what university subjects are like, what do you do as a first year engineering student, or what do you do in your second year of physics? So again, I'd, in the future, love to keep in contact with people who've left A-level physics and gone into STEM subjects. And I'd love to kind of make more videos with people like you. So yeah, that's the plan, really.
Nice. Sounds like a great plan. And it's been very good having you on the podcast as well. We're going to end with a couple of questions from people who actually watch this podcast. I've asked a couple of my friends if they had anything to ask. And the first question someone asked was, what is your most interesting topic about physics and why?
Well, that's a good question. There's some topics which you might think are a bit boring initially, but actually when you're teaching it, you realize that sometimes there are some amazing demos and ways that you can kind of bring it back to what people have learnt. And I think if you're a good teacher, you can make any topic interesting, or most topics interesting. I suppose when I was teaching in the class, anything to do with rockets, I quite liked, because I quite liked explosions and things flying around and a bit of chaos. That's not always the most interesting thing to actually make a video about, though, when you actually come to looking at the forces. The ones that I've personally found most interesting are actually the topics like medical physics, because when you're looking at how physics can be used to maybe image parts of the body, or how it can be used to treat certain things, there are so many bits of physics which are brought together. So it might be bringing particle physics and, annihilation of matter and antimatter. There's radioactive sources being used. And I think that for me, that's really interesting, because it's something that is used to help people, and it's cutting edge and it's always changing. But also people can sometimes relate to their everyday life if they've had an MRI scan, for example, or if they've had an ultrasound, to see how they are. I think there's so much really interesting physics in these things that are now kind of routine in hospitals. And I think for me, that's one of the more interesting bits of physics that I've learned about and have actually taught about.
Yeah, that is a good topic. And last question, if you weren't doing physics, what other subject would it be?
I don't know. It would either be maths, because I quite like maths at school. But on the other hand, there's a lot more competition with the maths. The other thing I might do is if somebody said you're not allowed to make any more physics videos, I would probably make the switch to doing chemistry videos. The reason for that is that I really liked chemistry when I did it at A-level. I've taught it at GCSE, but I think that there are so many amazing demonstrations and chemical reactions that you could show on video in a really spectacular way. I think probably it'd be more fun to do chemistry than just to do lots and lots of endless maths. So yeah, I'd probably make chemistry videos instead and just learn what I need to for that.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Lewis, thank you so much for your time. We're actually bang on time, so thank you so much for being on the podcast. You guys go check out the websites below. Every single link is down in the description. Go check that out. I also have a prompt in the top right hand corner of the screen. Check that out as well. Again, Lewis, if you ever want to come on another podcast, just let me know. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll speak to you later.